Hi, everybody. Mike Beer here with your Saturday race of the day at DRF. The race of the day is at Gulfstream Park. Race number 10, it's the grade 3 Mr. Prospector, $100,000 purse. They're going to go 7 furlongs on the dirt. Let's look at the field because for a race that only has a $100,000 purse, you got a couple of big names in this race. The number 2 is Imperial Hint. The number 3 is XY Jet. And these are two of the top sprinters in the country. They have been over the last couple of seasons, and they still are right now. We'll see how they both run in this spot because they both do have some questions surrounding their current form. Of course, Imperial Hint was slated to run in the Breeders' Cup sprint back in November. He would have been one of the favorites in that race. He was forced to scratch the morning of that race with a little foot issue. His trainer says it was a minor thing, and he feels like he's okay to run in the Mr. Prospector today for sure. And XY Jet has a bigger question to answer because we haven't seen XY Jet since the end of March when he won the Dubai Golden Shaheen. He has not raced in the 260 plus days since then. So you have that to deal with XY Jet. You also have just the fact that this race is now 7 furlongs. The Mr. Prospector was always a 6 furlong race. Just in the last couple of years, they've changed it to 7. And, let's be honest, 7 furlongs really isn't XY Jet's best distance. So yeah, he has to deal with the distance and the layoff as he comes back and faces a top horse in Imperial Hint, among others. It's a field of 6. And it's actually outside of the big names. There are some pretty good horses in here. So it's not just a walkover for the 2 favorites, although they do hold a pretty serious edge on this field. If one or both of them shows up with their very best race, the rest of this field is in very big trouble. Before we get back to those 2 favorites, there are a couple of horses that I just want to touch on. Zenden is the 4. He's a very lightly raced 3-year-old for Todd Pletcher. He returned from a long layoff in November to make his first start for Pletcher. And I thought he ran well that day. New buyer top at 95. He won that allowance race, and now Todd's going to step him right up. This is a very tough spot for this horse. He's very lightly raced with a lot of upside. Very interested to see not only what he does on Saturday, but what he does down the line, because he could turn out to be an okay older horse. And next to him, the number 5 is Lasting Legacy. He's a contender, I guess, for Jason Service. I think he's a pretty tough read in this race. He started out his career with some potential. He ran a couple of fast races in his first 2 career starts. Really didn't get a lot done after that. He missed a lot of time, almost a full year of racing after his 3rd start. He came back with 2 races for Steve Asmussen at the end of last year and didn't run well in either of those races. Back to the sidelines, came back off a layoff this summer for Jason Service at Monmouth Park, and he went 3 for 3 over the summer. For Service, he did run a couple of triple-digit buyers in his last 2 starts. And Monmouth Park also runs their own edition of the Mr. Prospector. And the last time we saw Lasting Legacy, he won that race with a 101 buyer. Listen, it wasn't the most impressive win in the world, I didn't think, but he got it done in there, and he did earn a figure for it. On figures, he is, sort of a fringe contender, especially if the 2 big favorites don't show up with their best race. But I don't know. I felt like he was in a little bit tough here. We'll see what Service can get out of him. Let's go back to the 2 big names in the race, though. We'll start with Imperial Hint, number 2. Listen, he's just the horse to beat in here because he has that edge of recency on XY Jet and the 7 furlong distance. While it's not his best distance, he's 3 for 5 over it in his career. So he'll get this far. And he's got fine tactical speed in this race. As we talk about the pace, let's look up the pace projector for the race because it does suggest that it's going to favor the horses who are going to be up front. Those horses are going to be the 2 favorites. XY Jet has the best speed in this field. They have him out there on a lead. In the situation that's supposed to favor horses on near the early lead. We'll see how loose he can get and how fast he has to go to get there. Because Imperial Hint, if nothing else, he doesn't need to lead, but he's not a slow horse. So I don't think it's like a situation where XY Jet's going to run this horse off his feet. But we'll see what happens. Imperial Hint, when you're talking about his big efforts, he is a 2-time Grade 1 winner this year. And let's go back to the first of those Grade 1 wins. We have a replay for that. This is at Saratoga. This is his first start since he ran in that Golden Shaheen, and XY Jet wired him in that race. He only finished 3rd that day. He got a layoff. He came back with this effort, and it was just a really, really impressive win for this horse. He had the speed to keep up track in a duel. He just took this race over and blew this field out with a big 114 buyer speed figure. That was Diamond Dupes finishing 2nd. Diamond Dupes also back in this race, but he just had no chance with Imperial Hint that day. Exited that big Grade 1 win and came back to win another one, the Bosberg at Belmont Park in September. He worked harder for that win, but he still got it done, and he beat a very good horse in Firenze Fire that day. So, listen, he's coming in off of 2 very big efforts. He's way the horse to beat in here. XY Jet is, you know, a dangerous rival because he has speed. He could make the lead in here. And on his best day, he's a very, very fast horse. We have a replay of that Golden Shaheen we mentioned before. We'll look at XY Jet winning that race because it's interesting that at that time of the year, it's very early in the season. Obviously, he was in good form. He had won the Smile Sprint in June, a grade 3 race. He came back off of a little bit of layoff in the Sunshine Millions. He didn't run that well. But then he won again leading into the Golden Shaheen. And that was one of his good races, the Golden Shaheen. He got to the front. He was never letting that field in the race. You saw Imperial Hint just couldn't really make a late impact on him. That was a good effort from XY Jet, but we haven't seen him since then. It's a long layoff. 7 furlongs has never been his game. He's only tried it 3 times. You have to go all the way back to 2015 to get a start at 7 furlongs for this horse. They just do not try him at this distance very often. So we'll see if he handles it. If he handles it, he's going to be very tough to run down. They're the horses to beat by a lot in this race. The 2 favorites are. But I'm just going to go in a little bit of a different direction here for my top pick, and I'm going to make my top pick in the race, number 6, Diamond Dupes. It just feels to me like if Imperial Hint and XYJ, if they don't show up with their best race, it feels to me like Diamond Dupes is the horse who has the best chance to beat them. And I'm just going to take a positive position on Diamond Dupes because we saw him run that good second to Imperial Hint in the Vanderbilt back in the summer. He actually ran pretty well that day. I know there's a lot of circumstantial stuff that got him to run second there, but he was into that race in really good form. He came out of it to run a huge second in the Grade 1 Shadwell Turf on the grass. And then he came back in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He didn't run well that day. I thought he'd run better, but he just broke poorly from the gate and just never got involved. I don't want to be too hard on him for that race. As he comes back here, he cuts back in distance and he gets back to his favorite track. He's 4 for 5 at Gulfstream. 7 furlongs is no problem for this horse. And if the 2 favorites here either hook up or they just don't show up at their best race, I feel like Diamond Dupes has a chance to pull off a slight upset here, and he's going to be a fair price in this race. So I put Diamond Dupes on top in your Saturday race of the day. It's the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector at Gulfstream Park. It's race number 10. It has a great field of 6 with a very interesting matchup of 2 top sprinters, and the approximate post time is 4:30 Eastern time. Good luck.